On this journey of expanding my understanding of healing, I've met remarkable teachers who have helped me see that we don't have to navigate life's challenges alone, that there are tools, ancient and intuitive, that can help us find our way. One of these teachers, Liv, a spiritual guide, astrologer, yoga teacher, whose journey is a powerful testament to transformation, is here with us today. Before stepping fully into this work, Liv spent over 2 decades as a high-level event producer in LA's fast-paced world. But life in its quiet wisdom had other plans for her. Through a series of deeply personal shifts, Liv began to awaken to a different kind of calling, one rooted in healing, in energy, and in soul alignment. She embodies the grace of reinvention, the courage to listen when life's whispers change, and the wisdom to use spiritual tools as a compass, not just for herself, but for those of us lucky enough to cross her path. I still remember our first call. I was sitting in my car outside the hospital after a long day of complex cases in the cath lab, completely overwhelmed. I was in the middle of massive shifts in my own life, and nothing seemed to fit anymore. I didn't even have the language for what I was feeling. Liv listened very calmly and then reflected back something from that astrology chart that made it all make total sense. It was like I could finally exhale, and that conversation was a turning point, not just because of what she said, but because of how deeply seen I felt. Since then, Liv has been one of the people I turn to when I need clarity. She introduced me to tools like energy, astrology, the idea of soul purpose, not as abstract concepts, but as practical guides for moving through change with integrity and self-trust. Today, we're talking about the compass we all carry inside, the one that so many of us were never taught to use. Liv, welcome. I'm so honored to open this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, Liv, you spent 2 decades producing high end events in LA. I have to ask you, what was your coolest experience?
Oh man, LA was through my 20s, so it was exciting to be there anyways. And I worked for Wolfgang Puck there, and I did huge events, celebrity weddings, and the Oscars. But what was more exciting was actually when I moved to Austin and started my own event production company. And, that was a challenge in and of itself to feel confident enough to see if I could do this big level events myself. And I did. And my most favorite event, which probably took the cake for all 20 years, was Formula One.
Wow.
That was a huge, massive production. I handled pretty much every aspect of the entire event.
So, how did you, this high end event planner, become this very experienced and knowledgeable spiritual teacher? Like, what happened?
Oh, definitely through burnout. Yeah, running my own company, doing huge events like Formula One and a lot of high end weddings and all the events in between. I was pregnant with my second baby, had our busiest year yet. I think I did 40 events that year, and was trying to juggle being a mom to my younger son, welcome a new baby into the world, and be the mother of this whole company and everybody on my staff and my clients. And I really hit a wall where I just felt empty. And I went to yoga teacher training to just refill my cup because it had always served my life in a beautiful way. And it had always been exercise, but I wanted to dive deeper, just really anything to not think about events. I went to a yoga teacher training to kind of tuck out of the world and tuck into myself. And that was really life-changing.
It's so fun that you mentioned the yoga teacher training because that was a turning point in my own life. I basically quit my job. I said, I have no idea what's next, but I'm going to do this thing that I've always wanted to do. Can you tell us more about that? What did you gain from that experience?
Oh, yeah. I went to yoga teacher training, like I said, just to kind of repair myself. And I had zero intentions of teaching. I just wanted to go study yoga a little bit and understand really why my mood and my energy would shift so much after a class, why I would feel so full again. The biggest game changer for me was meditation. When I first sat down for a first meditation practice, I felt like I wanted to run from my body. I felt like a prisoner, in fact, in my own body. I couldn't sit still. Everything hurt. My mind was running at 100 miles per hour like my life did. I just kept saying, I can't do this. I'm just not the kind of person that can meditate. I'm just, type A, too busy, whatever excuses I had to run. But of course, it was in this training and we had to meditate every day. And I like to do things, right or by the books. I really wanted to give it a fair shot. And I kept sitting with myself And I think after 2 weeks, I sat through a meditation where I didn't want to run and my body didn't hurt. And I felt this light bulb go off of like, oh my gosh, what is that? It left such an immense curiosity of what else was there in the stillness that I didn't think I could get to. And that really was what kind of lit a fire in me to know so much more.
And I feel like ever since then, you've just gained this tremendous amount of knowledge in the spiritual realm. It's almost like you have all these different tools and now you teach them. Do people need different tools based on where they are in their life and who they are, what their experiences are? How do you kind of know what fits for what person?
Yeah, I've been studying this path for about 10 years now on a really regular, everyday, living it basis. And I've probably explored most tools that exist. I'm a Sagittarius moon, so I have a deep curiosity and fascination with life. But really, what I've learned the most is yes, there are tools, but the most important one is your breath. And it exists within you, and really everything you need is within you. So while I implore exploring a bunch of tools, I think what people ultimately find if you do the work, that you really always come back to yourself. And all you really ever need is presence with your own breath.
I really believe in that too. I think intuitively we all are drawn to the modalities that we need, but at the end of the day, it's all within us. And it's just accessing that intelligence or whatever it is that we need within us.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the exploration of learning to discover yourself. Like, what do you like?
Yeah.
How does it feel in your body? And I think it's necessary to kind of get to know yourself through all these different, modalities.
What really amazes me about you is you have this incredible ability to just keep reinventing yourself, keep following what's in alignment. Do you ever face doubt? And if you do, what do you do to overcome the doubt and keep moving in the direction that feels aligned?
Interesting you say that because that actually, self-doubt came up for me before our Taos retreat. I would say just, kind of backpedaling a little bit is I have definitely been pretty good my whole life about following my organic intuition. Before I even knew what intuition was, I feel like anytime I had a whole body yes, I just naturally went that direction. So I feel like I easily followed guidance before I ever even knew what guidance was. And so I leaned into things if I felt a yes, and I leaned away from things if I felt a no. And so a lot of times I did have a lot of hindsight to look back. Every time I felt a yes and I did it, it worked out, even if it was hard or even if it didn't go the way I planned. And so, but sure, I think self-doubt comes up when I get in the mind. The mind is full of limitations, and anytime I'm not really just moving with that more intuitive feeling and trusting, in flow really, and I get in the head and start to question or try to think logically through things, then that's where self-doubt starts to come up. And then, you got to work with it. And sometimes I think at this point in my life, in mid 40s, I have enough hindsight to be able to get through self-doubt with looking at the things I've accomplished in my life and the way, anytime I've done something that scared me, I grew from it 100% every time. And nothing was ever as scary as I would make it to be in my mind. And so I tend to just go for it and see what happens.
I think that's brilliant. And you also have this really deep self-awareness. And I think you've done a lot of deep inquiry. And I think astrology is a really interesting tool. And that's how we crossed paths. When I was seeking, I was trying to figure out, like, I'm making all these big changes. All these things are happening in my life. Am I just completely going crazy? Am I having a midlife crisis? Or is it something other? And when we sat down with that chart, I got so much peace from what you shared with me, and everything started to kind of fit and make sense. It didn't fix all the things, right? But it kind of created this framework in my mind of how can I work with this? And so can tools like astrology actually help us navigate those big transitions?
Oh, absolutely. Astrology's probably been, if you want to call it a tool, my number one tool that I have recently just fallen in love with. I've only really been, I'm self-taught, first of all, by my absolute fascination with it because of how true it has felt in my body, in my being at a soul level. I really only found it maybe 5 years ago. And the first reading I ever had, I was like, what did you just say? I don't know. But there was something in there that was like a soul remembrance of like, you need to know this more. And so I just dove all the way in, and I have been essentially eating astrology for breakfast, lunch, and dinner since. And I really do look at my chart probably every day, or I tell people often that I learn about myself through, one crazy transit at a time. That I can know my chart, but until something is activating something or something is revealed later, it's almost like I learn more through my astrology about myself as needed. And astrology is really what I call, the divine language of the soul. And I like to take the perspective of the evolutionary lens of astrology and see life through the lens of the soul. That at a soul level, you choose your birth time, your location, your parents, your blueprint, which is your birth chart, and everything is kind of set up in there as a guide to come down here into the earth plane as a spiritual infinite being having a human experience. And these are your codes. And it's really important to know them. I feel like, on one level, it's to know yourself better, which I think is to live more consciously and to really, optimize and reveal the most that you can of your soul expression here.
You also emphasize the importance of that full body yes, of knowing like this is something that's important or valuable. And I think we live in a world where there is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of things in the wellness space and in the healing space where people may not necessarily have the idea of what is credible and what is not. And so that self-trust becomes very important.
Yeah.
And also you mentioned something about how, we kind of work with all of it, the good and I don't want to call it bad because it's not bad. It's all part of our evolution, but all of these things kind of coexist. And it's like, how do we work with them? And I love astrology as a tool. So I would love to get deeper into it with you.
Yeah, I love that.
So let's talk astrology. For someone who's never explored their chart before, how can astrology serve as a guide, not a crutch, during times of change or healing?
In the heart of all that I've learned between yoga, meditation, astrology, I love to explore anything cosmic, galactic, quantum physics, the nature of reality. I think the most important thing that we can do here is to really explore consciousness and what is consciousness and what are we as avatars of consciousness, or this human housing this infinite soul and having this expression. So I think using astrology and discovering these codes is so important. It's not that everyone needs to become an astrologer, but to learn the language and really understand who you are and what you're meant to express and what kind of challenges you might have laid out for yourself, so that anytime you are kind of caught up in the minutia of life or a growth edge or a challenge, you can have that zoomed out perspective of like, okay, at a soul level, why is this in front of me? And I know one of my healers and teachers, Fran, had used the term, if it's in front of you, it's for you. And that really worked with me in astrology and really understanding like, what am I meant to, if the soul comes here to grow, evolve, learn, and expand, then it's all laid out in our charts. So I think, at a basic level, you can learn a lot about your personality through, the sun, the light of consciousness shining through you as your personality. And the moon is how you process your emotions and how you're, what type of feeler you are, what type of emotional body you have. And your rising sign is kind of like your aura or how others see you, which might feel a little bit different. You might be perceived differently than you feel that you are as your sun sign. But then we have other codes. Your North Node is your soul mission, your purpose. And then we have the way, your Mars is, like how your energy is. I mean, there's just so much to discover just about your basic makeup that is helpful to plug yourself into the right jobs and relationships and where to direct your focus, especially when you come into some bigger astrological transits along the way that I like to call the 3 knocks on the doors of awakening, that help you understand when to pivot, when you do feel those soul nudges, when to, when you feel stuck or need to make a big change. There's like astrological reasons that I have found to be extremely useful to make those pivots with more information, I guess, if you will.
I think you've been extremely graceful in your pivots, and I've learned just watching you a tremendous amount about making those changes in my own life. And so I really feel like one thing stuck with me whenever we did our reading, and it was the North Node, and it was to get a glimpse of the soul purpose. Can you tell us a little bit more about the North Node?
Yeah. Which is really interesting because that was probably one of the first things that excited me most to discover about astrology, because it turns out back in 2015, when I did abruptly, have that burnout, abruptly go to yoga teacher training, and came out of that where I closed my business and totally pivoted to becoming a yoga teacher. And my husband was like, what is going on? Well, it wasn't until really just, I think 8 years later, like 3 years ago, I discovered the nodes. And in evolutionary astrology, the North Node is your soul purpose, your mission. And the South Node is kind of what you come in here more comfortably feeling. Something you've either brought with you from a past life or already have full knowledge of feeling that way, but it's something you're here to integrate, not necessarily like get rid of, but integrate and move towards your North Node. They're always opposite of each other. And the nodes are really just mathematical points. They're not a physical planet or aspect. They're mathematical points on the ecliptical axis, but they're truly, like it says, your North Node, like the direction you're going in life. And when I learned about them, I was like looking at an ephemeris, and when was my nodal return was what was I was learning about is every 18 years in your charts, you have your nodal return where it returns to the place that it was at the time you were born. And I had my nodal return in 2015 at the exact moment, like the exact month that I went to yoga teacher training. And I was like, wow, because it was a whole body. I don't know why, it doesn't make any sense. I make a lot of money what I'm doing, and I want to go change everything to be a yoga teacher, which initially doesn't make very much money. But it was like a soul calling that I couldn't resist, and it made no logical sense. And so it was really interesting to stumble across, upon astrology and look back without knowing the astrology, like it or not, ready or not. Like I always tell people, the astrology is still at play, and your soul is governing your moves. And this is the energy that's kind of set up to support those moves. And so that was a North Node or a nodal return pivot where your soul pushes you towards your mission, is how I would kind of look at that. In 9 years, 9 years, you have your nodal reversal, which is kind of like a check-in point. Like, did you make the turn towards your soul mission or did you not? So the reversal can sometimes be a challenge if you didn't listen to kind of your nudges from the universe, if you will, or your soul. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. And, while you're talking, I'm just thinking through my own chart, and it's like it all corresponds in a way that you can't make it up, right? And I didn't know my astrology whenever I was going through all these big transitions, and knowing it actually helped give me that roadmap of, okay, like this is actually totally normal. Like listen to that quiet voice inside you that tells you that you need to look further. Mm-hmm. And I think it's made such a big impact on my life. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
So where do people start? Like where can somebody start learning about their own chart?
I mean, I definitely recommend getting a reading, a basic soul blueprint reading if you're a birth chart with an astrologer. And then if it piques your interest, maybe you get a couple readings, go a little bit deeper with somebody. But then there's always a lot of wonderful podcasts and books. There's so many incredible astrologers. Molly McCord is one of my favorites. I've taken pretty much all of her courses. She has a lot of really accessible stuff online. But you want to start with kind of your basics, and you can always add, which is what's so interesting. You have your basic blueprint with the personal planets, the outer planets, your sun, moon, and rising. And then after that, you can get deeper and know even more about yourself by adding in Kuiper belt objects and asteroids, and it can get pretty far out there.
This is why I'm so lucky to have you in my life, because
it's very dynamic.
I don't even know how you can conceptualize some of these things.
It really feels more like a remembrance, because it's a language. It's a complicated language. It's math. It's science. It's very dynamic, and I have no idea why I understand it.
I also deeply believe in this soul level remembering. It's like wisdom that comes to us or with us from, lifetimes, mm-hmm. or from the guides or support that we have that we can't necessarily see or explain. So aside from astrology, what other tools can people lean on during times of transition? What's helped you? What's out there? Just kind of a brief summary, because a lot of people have never heard of breath work. A lot of people have never heard of meditation as a daily practice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer in breath work, and really that's the root of yoga. I mean, when you're conscious of your breath, you're definitely able to shift your nervous system into a more calm state. And we live a life that's highly stimulated, definitely, overworked, just so much input. And so I think when we give ourselves space to hear our breath, and our parasympathetic nervous system is triggered at the sound of our breath. And so I'm all about having people hear the sound of their breath, which is one reason I love to teach the Ujjayi breath in a flow yoga class. Like, yes, you're moving your energy. I teach a meditation practice of that same Ujjayi breath where you're not moving, and you get to really get a sense to feel how much energy you're building in your body, so that when you do take that yoga class and use that particular style of breath, you're now moving and dispersing all of that energy. So it's really all energy work, and it's utilizing the breath, whether you're moving your body or you're sitting and consciously breathing at a slow pace or at a more invigorating pace. There's a lot of different ways to play with energy and explore that in your own body.
It's like you just knew my next question.
Oh.
And I think it's beautiful how you relate breath to the nervous system, breath to energy. And as a person who works in a really intense, high kind of risk, high pressure environment, I see it in myself where the second my pager goes off, it's like my nervous system gets dysregulated. And even after I finish a case and I come home at like 2 or 3 in the morning, I can't fall asleep. Everything is so amped up. And before I went to yoga teacher training, I didn't even know tools like that existed. And I, quite frankly, thought it was silly that breath could make any kind of significant or meaningful difference until I ended up in your yurt and we were doing breath work, and I had this full body release. It was like emotion that was stored and stress. The nervous system just kind of downregulated, and I was sitting there crying in a yurt full of people I didn't know. And I think that's when I realized how powerful it can be. And it doesn't always have to be that dramatic, but even just like a day-to-day practice of clearing that space and moving that energy, I think it's so valuable. And that's coming from me as an interventional cardiologist who never even knew what that was a year ago. I think a lot of people in the physical medicine world, my world, we don't really talk about energy. We don't talk about the flow of energy in the body. I didn't even know what a chakra was until I went to yoga teacher training, even though I'm of Indian origin, right? So how would you explain that to people who don't necessarily know those concepts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go, towards the root of our reality. I mean, science has proven energy is a real thing. And really, the more quantum mechanics, tries to help science catch up, is that I think quantum physics is really giving a lot of language to what the yogis or spiritual teachers have been saying for thousands of years about energy. Everything is really energy. There's nothing that is not energy, and quantum physics talks about quantum entanglement, everything having this interconnectedness. Besides breath, I think nature is a huge component for grounding and feeling energy and stabilizing your energy. I think you can also, with breath work in particular, is a really fast way to feel it, to just know it in your body without needing to have words for it. You can do really strong breath practices in a seated meditation and just feel the aliveness in your body. It's a quality of aliveness. It's a buzzing energy. It's, you can just feel it moving in your body.
And I think you have this really beautiful course, the quantum healing course that you share. And you share all these really big concepts in very digestible pieces. When we talk about the energy centers and the energy flow in the body, I think every major tradition has some interpretation of that, right? And so how do you kind of put it together with what we do in the physical medicine world? Is it important to think about energy in what we do?
Yes, you'll hear in almost any class I ever teach is we really should be more conscious about what we consume energetically with our eyes, ears, and mouth. That obviously the foods that we eat are giving our bodies physical energy for the matter component of our body. But then what we listen to, on social media or on the news or in movies, how we entertain ourselves, the people we're around, the spaces we're in, everything is in a dynamic exchange and affects our body and our emotional body, our energy body. You hear me talk about a lot of bodies, and I know in yoga we call them the kleshas or sheaths. And to think of your body as, yes, we have this physical form, and that's where, our body will speak to us to tell us when something is out of alignment that's a little less subtle, because as you go deeper, the more subtle it gets. But everything is constantly information and data being exchanged with our bodies, and our bodies are kind of like antennas. and you'll hear me talk about our body being a form of technology. And we're like an extremely amazing, brilliant form of technology. And I'm sure you understand this just knowing the heart so well. I almost think it's ridiculous and silly that we don't talk about all the other aspects of our being. Like, we're so much more than just physical matter. And I think, yeah, having an awareness about what you're taking in and how that forms how you feel in your mood and your health, physically, mentally, and emotionally, is everything around you, your environment and people that you choose to be around and what you take in.
I think it's so valuable too. And even before I went to yoga teacher training, even before I understood anything about the energy centers in the body, I always had this feeling like I would go into the ER, right? Whenever I get called for a patient with a heart attack, I'd show up in the ER and I would have this feeling. It's like all the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And it's like this feeling of like something is going to happen. And it was always right. So their patient was sicker than what they looked like when they walked in. So your senses are heightened, and so you're planning to do a higher risk procedure, and you're planning all the things that you would need in case something happens. And we have all the contingencies ready to go. So I feel like now, knowing what I know about energy, I almost wonder, is that like the energy fields colliding? Like, is that information that we're getting from this energetic body? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe that everyone is intuitive, and the sixth sense, if you will, is something that we should be nourishing and nurturing. And I think that's why the quality of food and the quality of our environments and the quality of the information that we take in our body helps to make us more of like a clear antenna, so we can sense our environments, we can sense danger, we can sense when just what is around us. Much more clearer when our vessels are clear, when our vessels are healthy, when we have good sleep, we have good nutrition, we have good energy hygiene. Like, we can feel and sense when something is off or different, which I think can go deeper into even knowing your own health of your body and healing your abilities in your own body. Yeah, I think it's very important to attune our antennas, which good sleep, good nutrition, outside in nature more often. I have an incredible story if you want me to share
Yes,
it.
please.
I don't know if you're going to get into energy shifting, but I know anytime I've ever felt really stressed out and or just dense, with like I've taken in, news information about a lot of suffering in the world or wars or things that just weigh heavy on my heart, and feel like I'm carrying that around, and I can sense that my body feels heavier or my emotions feel heavier and I don't feel as clear as I would like to be. I started a practice of going outside to my garden and sticking my hands literally physically in the earth. Like, I would just scoop the earth and bury them in. And this is going to sound woo woo, but it was like it was affecting my ability to sleep well and recover in the night, like have good sleep. So I would go out and I would just kind of give the earth all of my worries, my self doubt that I was experiencing, or all of the negative thoughts that I was having, or stress or worry or whatever was just kind of mucking up my day, or the heaviness I had taken on. And I started that practice every day, whether I was having a good day or bad day or not. It just became my thing to clear before going to bed. It was so interesting. It happened to be winter, right after my winter harvest, where we kind of let the crop cover grow over. And the crop cover grew over the entire garden except for the area where I bury my hands.
Wow.
And that just immediately gave me a physical showing of negative energies, of like releasing things that feel heavy or sad or dense and putting them there. Nothing grew. So that immediately just connected right away into my body of, imagine if I kept all those thoughts in my body. Like, how would that have an effect on my heart? How would that have an effect on my gut health? I mean, my whole everything. And so that was just kind of an amazing physical example of, what energy can do to our bodies.
I get goosebumps when you say that. And a lot of this inquiry started for me through the patients that I took care of. So I had a series of patients that came in with spontaneous coronary artery dissection. It's when the artery basically unravels. It's more common in women, associated with stress, inflammation in the body. I can feel the just disharmony, the energetic disharmony. And these women are amazing people. They're giving constantly, but they're not really receiving, and not really taking the steps that are needed to do the energy hygiene. And this is before I even understood what any of this was. And, kind of fill your own cup, and it manifests physically. And it always kind of perplexed me why they kind of felt the same energetic, like the the interaction that you get whenever you're around a person. It kind of felt like the same type of energy. And then we had patients who had different types of heart attacks, kind of your more classic presentation. You fix the artery, they physically get better, but then they come to see you in the office in 3 months and you're about to celebrate because you're like, hey, your heart muscle function is normal. And you walk in and you still feel that same feeling of like something is not right, but I can't tell you what it is. And so I think it totally makes sense because a lot of what I do is we're fixing a very physical problem without really kind of understanding what got them there.
Yeah.
And it's not because we don't want to, but it's because we don't necessarily understand the language.
Right. Yeah, I think it's very important to go to the root of, I mean, especially emotionally, our bodies. There's an awesome book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I love that book.
Yeah. And our connective tissue is like a form of our consciousness. I think it
Fascia.
definitely, yeah, it holds and stores memory and emotions, and obviously things that are more dense stick a little harder.
And the more that I do now, and the more people that I meet in this spiritual space, and I don't even want to call it the spiritual space. Like, you're basically a scientist in my mind. Like, you started your quantum healing course with a quote by Einstein. And so I feel like the more I'm learning, the more I do truly believe that disease is tied to these other forms of the body, the energetic, emotional, soul level. And over time, it changes the way that our body reacts physically, like the way that we express our genes, the way that we experience inflammation, and how that affects every single part of our bodies.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm on that very extreme end of the work where I see somebody who had a physical consequence of that, my desire now is to say, hey, how can I make sure that this person has what they need to not be in that position again? Because I love doing my job. I love what I do as an interventional cardiologist, but I'd much rather the patients feel in alignment and not end up on my table.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The concept of open heart actually originated from a conversation you and I had.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you know that.
I don't know that. That's awesome.
So you mentioned to me that there are 3 hearts. Can you tell us what they are? Because I always thought there was one, the physical anatomical heart.
Yeah, it's so funny that you bring this up because I think I even remember feeling shy about sharing that concept because it came to me in a dream.
Well, look at it now.
Yes, I love it. Here in the physical. I mean, of course, we have our biological physical heart, and then through my yogic lens, I learned about the heart chakra, the Anahata chakra, and that was more about the energetic heart, and that took me into the realm of energy. And then it was actually in a dream that I saw a third heart, and so I was like, oh, do I share this? Because it's going to sound really out there. But I called it the cosmic hologram. And it was like a blueprint of the entire universe contained within your heart. And, you know, because everything is connected, it is source itself. It is, you know, everything. It's the unlimited potential of everything that exists. And I believe that that is also very much in your body and part of your own physical heart, and it's layered in. And I think sometimes you'll hear in yogic teachings as the high heart or the spiritual heart or the hridaya. You know, I'd always heard that, but I just kind of kept it out there. I was like, oh yeah, it's the spiritual heart. And then when I saw it in my dream, I was like, wow, it's a blueprint of the entire quantum universe. And I loved that visual. And that's when I wanted to share it because I'm like, to have a visual helps it feel more, tangible.
One, I think this is exactly why being open-hearted is so important, right? Because had you not shared that concept with me, who knows what would have happened if I didn't have that ripple, right?
Yeah.
And so I really love that for that reason, but also because of the concept itself.
Yeah.
I think I texted you actually. There was a night where I was like in bed and I was thinking about it, and I sent you this really long text message. I don't know if you remember this, but it was about heart transplant. So whenever we have patients who have heart transplant, and it's not everybody, but a lot of patients actually do tend to have changes in their preferences, in their personalities, in their inclinations, and it matches the donor sometimes. And it's really interesting. And
I thought that was amazing.
It's a widely known phenomenon, and you can't trace that back to the anatomical structure of the heart itself. So whenever you have these experiences in physical medicine that you can't explain, I think you do become more open and curious.
Which is kind of why I loved having that visual to, take people into meditations into their heart and spend time getting to know what is the blueprint in your heart, and to do heart coherent breaths and to really drop, especially if you get caught up and busy in the mind and overthinking and trying to stay in logic and science and reason, to, okay, that's too much. Drop into the heart and then explore the world from there.
So, my population, and I'm putting myself in this bucket. And so we tend to take on a lot of stress. We're in these really intense environments. We have very poor sleep hygiene. We're exposed to a lot of stressors. And patients probably don't know this, but a lot of times we are awake all night before we come back in to do procedures all day the next day, and maybe even take call again the next night. And it's not because we want to do it that way, but it's because of our ecosystem. It's just the need is so high that we have to kind of be able to perform, but we are human at the end of the day. And so when we have all these demands and energetically we're exposed to all these different elements, what is one simple practice that we can do to help create emotional, energetic safety for ourselves?
Honestly, I would say it probably starts with how you begin your day. And there's tools to utilize on site, to clear your energy or to reboot your system, to kind of give yourself some fresh energy. But I think the way you start your day is really important. The way you wake up and, have a practice of coming to meditation, finding your breath, centering yourself, setting intentions for your day is a really important habit or lifestyle to have to know what is my baseline anyways, before I even begin, what is my baseline, so that when you're off base, you can regulate. But on site, always the breath is with you all the time. So when you're in high stress, the more awareness you have, if you have a regular practice, you're going to know when you're triggered into this heightened state. And just taking some slow breaths, just a minute or two of inhaling for 4 seconds, small little retention at the top, and then a slow exhale for 6 to 8 seconds quickly helps you recover and refresh in your mind. There's lots of different breath practices you can do. But also you'll see me do body wipe downs for energy clearing on my body.
What is the body wipe down?
Where you just kind of wipe your arms, wipe your chest, like literally a physical touch, wipe down of your whole body is a really great way to kind of own your physical body and your energy body, and have, you might not have a Palo Santo stick with you, but you can wipe your body down.
So you're telling me that not everybody has to walk around with a Palo Santo stick to cleanse, and it looks different for everyone.
No, my main thing I'm always telling everyone is you don't ever need anything outside of yourself. Of course, occasionally we bring ourselves to a point where we need doctors and healers like yourself, but we really have all that we need, from our blueprint of our heart, our very own breath, to the way we maintain and care for our body to try to keep ourselves not in a state of perfection, but optimal awareness so that we can, find help when we need it. But yes, we should be able to regulate ourselves.
I love ending with that note of, people are their own healers.
Mm-hmm.
You are your own healer. And as a healer or as a physician, whatever you want to call yourself, I think we have to hold a certain frequency, and we have to be met at that frequency, right? To actually have that energetic exchange of healing. And it's not like I do something to fix you. It's like I'm here to help you facilitate in healing yourself, kind of thing. And so I think shifting that paradigm in my mind has made a big difference in how I take care of patients. If something feels off in your own body, you know your body better than anyone else, any other external source. And so I think having that trust in the self and seeking answers and, really finding the person who will be able to help you or help yourself. I think those things are really important too. And it just goes back to empowering people to listen to their inner voice.
Yeah.
Is what we call a midlife crisis sometimes actually a spiritual awakening?
I can actually find your midlife crisis in your astrology chart, believe it or not. It's called Neptune square Neptune.
Oh no, what is mine?
This was another one of those astrological components. This is the 3 knocks on the door of awakening that I had mentioned earlier. The first one is your Saturn return at age 30, which kind of helps. It's like a soul nudge towards your path, but a little bit more general, like your work path and kind of becoming an adult and maturing. Saturn's all about responsibility. But at 40 to 42, the midlife crisis is your Neptune square Neptune. And what I would say about that one is it doesn't have to be a crisis. For me, my experience with it was right around that time where I had a soul nudge, and I was grateful that I listened and I followed it. And I went, that one in particular for me was I had to go to Nepal, and I had to stay in a Buddhist monastery, and I had to chant with monks. And my husband was like, what? And that was my 40th birthday. And so I did, and I loved it. And that really continued to open my path. So for me, that was my crisis, was needing to chant with monks, and it didn't make any sense, but I did. My husband, I just witnessed going through his, and it was more of a dark night of the soul where he was really resisting the change that life was asking him to make. But it really looks like a huge pivot in your life. Like people change jobs, people get divorced, people buy the shiny red car. I mean, it's like this moment of who am I and what is my purpose? Surely, kind of at age 40, 42, it's either people are stuck in jobs they really don't like and they just can't take it anymore. And it happens to align with your Neptune square Neptune, kind of squeezing you to be like, hey, this is great. You've been doing this for a while, but you're meant to do this. And the North Node will direct you. And the other one would be your Uranus opposition. And that's more of like a lightning bolt type awakening. And we all go through all three of them. And for some people, it's just more easeful because you're really good at listening to the natural organic nudges and you do the things and you unfold them. And for others, they resist or they're just kind of not living life as consciously, or for whatever reason, it feels harder, more of a challenge because they're resisting the natural flow that your soul is wanting to have.
Think that is such an amazing answer, and I'm going to go check my chart after this.
Yeah.
And I think it also speaks to like the ebbs and flows of life and how do we navigate that? Do we trust in divine timing or whatever you want to call it? And I think you have navigated it so beautifully, and you're teaching me how to do the same. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We're just getting started here at Open Heart, and it's such an honor to share this space with you today. If today sparked curiosity or stirred something inside you, know that you are not alone. Many of us are just beginning to explore ideas like energy centers or the chakras, astrology, spirit guides, or what it means to experience a spiritual awakening. These concepts might sound unfamiliar now, but they've played a powerful role in both of our healing journeys. And maybe they could become practical grounding tools in your daily life if you feel so called. Visit our website or find us on social media for simple, beginner-friendly ways to explore these concepts to start weaving them into your own rhythm if they resonate. And remember, you already know what you need. Trust your heart, stay open, and let it guide you. With love, until next time, this is Priya Rao, signing off.